earlier. We can carry on. Yep, we're live now. Let's see. Okay, so King Arthur specifically and Welsh in general. Maybe I'll do Welsh in general at the end.
Can you read it?
No, not very well, but it's okay. I have it in translation.
Ah, nice.
Fantastic.
So,
all right,
well,
lead the way.
Welsh in general. Yep, Welsh in general. Let's see. I should say something really quickly about poetry. I'm not going to talk a lot about poetry, but a lot of the Can you even still hear me when I'm back there? Probably not.
Yes, no, maybe, depends.
Okay.
Go to the location where you're curious about, make a sound, and make a medium level sound or something, and test, I guess, is the only way to find out.
Am I audible from here?
Warm.
Could you hear that just now?
Yes.
Yes.
Probably not very well, though.
No, it was more like this. Could you hear me very well? You know, it was a bit echoey.
Well, at least you heard the "can I hear" part. Okay, so, and then I also need a place to put all these stupid books too. Okay, I'm going to put them in here, and I'm going to be eating at various times too. So there's a warning there. Okay. General thing, Wales and Ireland have among the earliest vernacular literatures. A lot of it is a lot of the poetry. I'm not going to say a lot about the poetry, but a lot of it is praise for various patrons. They have very complex system of combining rhyme and alliteration. There's one. Also, they're attested long after they were written. So, if they were written down, long after they're supposedly written. So, it's hard to tell what is actually from the early poets and what was added on later. So, a few names. I'll just toss a few names at you. Aneurin wrote about a battle against the Anglo-Saxons, which the British lost in the beginning of the 7th century, end of the 6th century. Has a possible early reference to Arthur because he describes someone as being very valiant, although he was no Arthur. So, fast forward a bit, because I might say more about the poetry later. Want to get into the Arthurian part. There's also a contemporary writer named St. Gildas, Gildas, who wrote in Latin, but he doesn't mention Arthur, but he does mention a victory at Mount Badon, whom a later writer attributed to King Arthur in the 9th century. What was I going to say about Arthur? There have been all sorts of theories about King Arthur.
Yeah, you can actually see.
Carry on. Sorry.
You can also see a recreation of that, and you can actually see a recreation of that battle in the Clive Owen King Arthur movie from 2004.
Good. I'm glad to. That was one of my questions because in popular media, King Arthur, our view of King Arthur kind of goes back to Malory, and Malory is after several centuries, of development of the mythos, because in the early stages it's primarily the Welsh, probably the Bretons. Then it moves to France, and also there's an author, Geoffrey of Monmouth, who wrote in Latin in the 12th century. He still retains some of the Celtic stuff, but by the time you reach Mallory, it's the Celtic stuff is still there, but it's no longer aware at all of its British Celtic origins. So what happens then is that by the time Mallory comes along, it's whoso pulleth out this sword from this stone is rightwise king born of all England. And you can see the problem right there. The English were the Anglo-Saxons. If Arthur existed at all, he was British or British Roman. He wasn't English at all. So you can see he got seriously appropriated. So that's one theory is. So that's one theory. He won Mountbatten. Another theory is he's a chap at the end of the 5th, beginning of the 6th century. Another theory, which is actually by the same chap who came up, who supported the Mountbatten theory, was that he was actually a chap in the 5th century who came from Britain and was fighting in Gaul against the barbarians. And his name is Rigo Thomas, which was actually a title. It means like something like most kingly, greatest king, or something like that. So that's another theory. Then he might not have existed. He might be a mythological figure. He's got mythology attached to him, but I think he must be something historical at some point. Then maybe he's just another name for Ambrosius Aurelius, who is mentioned by St. Gildas, and he also fought against the British in the 5th, not the British, the English, the Anglo-Saxons in the 5th century. So there's all these different theories. By the time the 9th century comes along, King Arthur. Oh, I should mention that there are several royal figures or princely figures in the 7th century named Arthur, and it wasn't that common a name beforehand. So that's another argument that maybe that some chap in the 6th century would have been named Arthur, and they would be named after him. So that's an argument for his historicity. Now, by the 9th century, you've got a whole. You're starting to get the whole thing. You're starting to get some of the things that will come up later in the tradition, but it's very much a Celtic-dominated tradition. You've got his dog Cavall is mentioned, and that survives into Mallory. That's one of the things that survived into Mallory. You've got the story. You know the story of the red and the white dragon. That story's in there, but it's attributed not to Merlin, but to Ambrosius Aurelius again, or Aurelianus again. So, and Merlin that got attached to Merlin in the 12th century by Geoffrey of Monmouth. So what can we say? And then later on in the Middle Ages, we've got a couple of things. We've got a poem called "The Spoils of Annwn," where Annwn is the other world, where Arthur and his knights, not knights, warriors, they're not knights yet. They go to this otherworldly land to get this cauldron of plenty. It's supposedly this might be the origin of the Grail legend. And then you've got a number of references in the poetry. You've got the Triads of the island of Britain, where he gets lots of different things attributed to him, and you've got You've got a couple of stories in the Mabinogion. The Mabinogion, I should have mentioned the Mabinogion earlier. It's our primary source for the Welsh tradition. And sorry to do so much talking. I'll open the floor up in a moment. What was I going to say? The Mabinogion, so 11 different stories, mostly mythological. All of them are mythological stories or pseudo-history. There's like 4 of them are about King Arthur. A couple of them show French influence, and a couple of them are in the native tradition, and they're very different from what we are used to. Now, my question is, how much awareness is there in popular media these days of King Arthur's British Celtic heritage? How much of that is there, and how much of it is mainly still in the tradition of like Mallory and the late Middle Ages? Whoops, somebody died.
Oh,
Oops.
done.
Done is done for. Half a moment.
That's not good.
Oops, sorry, did you just die? Sorry.
Yeah, I died a couple minutes ago, and I've just been waiting for you to get finished. I didn't know you were just saying about the question regarding popular culture. Like, what do you mean? So, what exactly like are you referring to? Like, in popular culture, like pretty much there's a King Arthur adaptation like once, I think like once or twice every decade, usually. If that's what you're referring to.
Yeah, so in general, in like films or whatever, video games, whatever, is he commonly represented as, because in literature, people already started, there was a revival in the middle of the last century. Before I was born, there was already a tendency to emphasize his Celtic British attributes, as opposed to making him an ideal late medieval monarch with knights and tournaments and the rest of that stuff, which you don't find in the early tradition. So, how much?
Most it's almost it's kind of weird. Like, it's almost like it's basically like not even like really like. Sometimes it's like in a fantasy world. Like an example of it is in Merlin, the TV show, is when it's pretty much in some kind of almost limbo fantasy world that doesn't really exist in the real world. There's I think the main one that's kind of historically based is the 2004 Clive Owen film, where you have King Arthur as a Roman centurion fighting the Saxons at Badon Hill with the help of the Woads or Celts.
Okay, yeah, that seems reasonable. So that's going back a little bit to the tradition where he's fighting against the Saxons, and the Saxons actually did in the the British actually did enjoy a bit of a revival in the 6th century. Now, after the Saxons had invaded, then for a while though the British had enjoyed a resurgence. That's the term I was looking for, a resurgence, and then at the end of the 6th century, beginning of the 7th century, it all went downhill. Although even then, they were still important in the north of Britain for a while longer, I believe. So yeah, basically, Arthur is something that can be used whatever way people want these days.
He can be used in a romance. He can be used as a nice guy who just has some camaraderie. So, like in an adventure. No. Apparently, the French did it. The French actually did it in the 12th century.
Yep, and we're gonna. Yep. I'm gonna do a later one about the French specifically, because the Arthurian tradition, as it existed in Wales, is a lot different. What happened was that these traditions, probably a lot of them started north of Britain. They went to Wales, and from Wales they went down south through Brittany. Then they hit the French, and Geoffrey of Monmouth, I guess, either got them from the Welsh or from the Bretons, and he wrote in Latin, and then he was translated into French. So some of the stuff hit the French that way. But for example, there's no Sir Lancelot in the Welsh tradition at all.
He's called Sir Lancelot du Lac, or Sir Lancelot of the Lake, in whenever he shows up.
Yeah, Sir Lancelot du Lac. Yep, there was no Sir Lancelot. His name might be a Breton name, but he first appears in Chrétien de Troyes. Oh, and we have a tie-in now with Movie Bob.
Yeah, Tolkien was writing Chrétien de Troyes, while Game of Thrones is an edgy version of Shrek.
Yes. Yep. And Tolkien is, if I remember correctly, Tolkien is Chrétien de Troyes and Marie de France without the sex. That's what I remember. There isn't really any actual sex in Chrétien de Troyes that I can recall. But that's by the way. So the main figures in the tradition are Kay and Bedwyr, who became Sir Bedivere, the chap who tossed the sword back into the lake, although that's not in the Welsh tradition at all. So, where is this thing? So what happens when here is one of the sources for the Welsh tradition. Let's see. So how Culhwch won Olwen, and Culhwch is spelled Culhwch, because W is a vowel in Welsh, sometimes, usually, commonly. So this chap named Culhwch goes to the King Arthur's court because he wants help getting the girl whose name is Olwen.
Is this where the Tristan and Isolde story came from, or is this a different thing as part of the just generic?
This is a different thing. This is something that didn't come up in the tradition at all. I mean, the continental tradition at all, although things mentioned in it do. Tristan actually is in the Welsh tradition too. Let me see, because I got this nice little book here called The Triads of the Island of Britain. Triads Innis Prydain, I'm sorry. And it's got a nice list of names at the end of it. And one of those names is Tristan. Since you've mentioned him, I might as well do a brief excursus on him. And pardon him, he's called Dristan, son of Taluch. in Welsh. It seems that the older spelling had a T and they changed it to a D. So there's a whole bunch of little things about him. He was apparently in North Britain. He may have been Pictish. It doesn't say much. Doesn't say much else about. Let's see. It does mention the name. The names Isolt and Mark are also mentioned in the tradition. There's a tradition that Mark had horse ears, and Mark was actually
Horse ears.
and his name actually means horse. Let's see.
Huh.
Where does it say that here? I've got horse ears. Sorry, I'm looking. They've got a lot of information here, and he doesn't use lots of paragraphs, unfortunately. King Mark. But yeah, the name, okay, it's found attached in North Welsh folk tradition too, and in Brittany. So the king has the ears of a horse of which he is ashamed, it says. To preserve his secret, he successfully kills each of those whom he is compelled to act as his barber. But I don't know if that's the story of Mark or if this is just a general thing. Oh, here we are. Mark had horse's ears, and no one knew that except his barber, and he did not dare to confess it for the sake of his head. And there came sickness to the barber, so he had to seek a physician who discovered that his secret was killing him. And he requested the barber to confess it to the earth. And so he did, and became well. And then the pipers came to the feast. They would play nothing but March, son of Merchion, has horse ears. Christio March Ivarch am Herchion. Probably not saying that right, but hey. So anyway, that's taken us a bit away from Tristan and Isolde. I must confess, I'm not as big on Tristan as on some of the other stuff. I've never been all that big on him. Not sure why.
I'm not either. I'm just aware of the story because I had a giant book of King Arthur's Knights. Though, interestingly enough, El Cid and Roland were included in the list of stories in there along with Siegfried.
Did you just say something about book burning, or did I mishear you? Hello? Sorry, repeat that last sentence.
I just know about the story of Tristan and Isolde because I have a big blue book of a lot of King Arthur's knights, though there's also stories regarding Roland, Siegfried, and El Cid, even though they don't at all fit into the other stories.
Okay, it's a compilation of a number of different medieval stories, because there's Roland, King Arthur, bunch of other things like that. Siegfried. Okay, I can sort of see that, a compilation of various medieval or early medieval stories. So, half a second. I'm going to have to get my lunch. So I may be AFK for a couple of minutes, but then I'll be back.
All right. Take your time. It's funny how the Google Scholar actually shows me all the documentations of King Arthur for free. I don't mind.
Cool.
Yeah, I can see some things like Lancelot actually was edited only when the friends were involved into it. and then came the Lady of the Lake with it. So that's actually
so
quite nice.
Excalibur is a French thing.
The name of the sword actually goes back to Welsh, though. It's one of the early things. I mean, yeah, the name of the sword is actually already in the Welsh tradition. He mentions Caledvwn, his sword. Where does he mention that? He's got a whole list of. Oh, that's the one.
I guess like that specific tradition only came in with the French, I suppose.
The name of the sword goes back earlier, but the tradition about the Lady of the Lake, that part of it, I don't know. I don't know. I don't see it I didn't see it in the Welsh tradition anywhere. Did the Bretons add it, or did the French add it, or was it originally some completely different story and then it got combined with King Arthur, or what? I don't know.
I know there's definitely like a couple of different like versions of how King Arthur got his sword. Since there's either like he got the sword in the stone, which is a symbol, and then he got Excalibur. And in some versions, it's either like they're both Excalibur, or they got broken and reforged, or fixed up. It's kind of a it's got a very flexible history, to say the least.
Yeah, well, the whole boiling has a flexible history. So
Could it not be possible for the French to know how to write no Welsh words, and therefore be implementing that into their books?
The theory is that they got it through the Bretons, that it was transmitted through the Bretons, and then the Bretons would have had a tradition in Breton, presumably, and then it would have got translated into French from there. That's the theory that I'm familiar with. But of course, lots of stuff are probably just made up by the French as well. We know that there's things of Welsh origin in the French romances, though.
That was Geoffrey, right, of Monmouth.
Yes.
Yeah, he claimed that that the Britons has translated the ancient Welsh for him with the Arthurian legend, providing a complete account of Arthuria's life in a Latin prose, Prose.
For that again?
Prose.
Prose. Prose?
Yeah. For I can show you. Hold on, I can show you what I'm reading. By the way, if I can share the screen, I'm just gonna be sharing my screen number 1. That's good enough. There you go.
Okay, half a second. Let's see. There. Can we see that? Oh, half a second.
Hold on. Which where I'll get back. Here it is.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I can't see that very well, but I wonder.
Yeah.
Half a second.
Apparently, that book became very, very, very popular, although it lacks a lot of historical value.
Yeah, I mean, it does have some stuff from the. It does have some things from the. It's closer to the Welsh tradition than Mallory is, so it's still got him fighting the Saxons, and it's still got lots of Celtic names in it.
What I really like about it is that Arthur here is actually displayed as a warrior king, and establishing peace throughout Britain instead of and then get later exposed and betrayed by his nephew, which is nice, you know.
Yeah, that's the bit that's emphasized in that. And he got that a lot of that he got from the history of the Britons in the 9th century. Some of his details he got from that. But in the Welsh tradition, you've got a whole glob of people that don't come up in the French tradition, and the people who are there are like different people are emphasized.
So Weisbrod was the first one who actually added the round table in it.
Yeah,
So he implemented the knights. Or round table of the
round
knights.
table. I'm guessing there were already knights in the thing.
Yeah, true, but it's still he put the famous round table in it. So that's great.
Yep. So here's what we get in the Welsh tradition. We get Culhwch comes to the court. He wants to get the girl. Open the gate, he says. I will not, says the gatekeeper. Why will you not? Knife is going into meat and drink into horn, and there is a throng in Arthur's hall. Excepting the king of a lawful dominion or a craftsman who brings his craft, no one may enter. And then it turns out, and then Culhwch says, if you open the gate, well and good. If not, I will bring dishonor to you, Lord, and give you yourself a bad name. However much you rail against the customs of, and so the gatekeeper's name is Glewlwyd, Glewlwyd. There are lots of W's. And he is the one who says, however much you rail against the custom of Arthur's court, you shall not enter until I've gone inside and spoken with Arthur. So eventually Culhwch gets let in, and he says, and he immediately demands Olwen, the daughter of the chief giant, Ysbaddaden, and he invokes her in the name of Arthur's warriors, and there follow several pages of names. So we've got the first two you've heard of, Kay and Bedwyr, but then immediately afterwards you start getting people that no one has heard of. Gradiel, enemy subduer. Blah, blah, blah. Like a whole long list of people. Some of these are people in Welsh myth, like Gwyn, son of Nudd. Some of them are God knows who. Some of them are just practically jokes. Like there's Sufficiency, son of Surfeit, is in here somewhere. Oh, it looks like Achilles is there. No, the son of Achilles is. Oh yeah, he is. Achilles is there, apparently. and blah blah goes on and on and on and on and on, and eventually, yep, it still goes on. A whole bunch of sons of Cow are in here. CAW, the Crow chap were here. He'd find that amusing. And some of these people have names like.
So is this where Alvar Nunez Cabeza de Vaca got his name?
Who? Sorry? Sorry? Who got his name?
Alvar Alvar Nunez, Cabeza de Vaca,
Ugh,
Headed
ew,
Cow.
what was that? Nothing I know of. Is this a reference to one of your, do like Wheel of Time or something?
Spanish explorer. He's the guy who discovered the Grand Canyon.
Oh. And what was his first name again?
His name is Alvar Nunez Cabeza de Vaca.
Oh, okay. Now I see. The cow-headed chap. Maybe so. Maybe so. Maybe so.
Interesting, by the way. The in the French romance in which King Arthur himself is the hero is in the Night of the Parrot. Apparently, that's one of the only French romance which has Arthur as a hero, apparently portrayed, which is quite nice. I didn't know that the French hated Arthur so much that they didn't want him to write as a hero.
He just sort of chills in the background.
Yeah, he's like, I don't need to do hero stuff. I'll already sit here and do absolutely nothing. And then once
Pretty
the when the Vulgate of the prose cycle is, that's when Lancelot finally comes into play with his queen, with his mock queen.
Oh no! Oh no! Say it not. But Lancelot comes up in there's a novel by, not a novel, a romance. Pardon me. By 1 second. Chrétien de Troyes, where Lancelot rescues Queen Guinevere, and that might have an historical basis because there's a story in one of the saints' lives about how Lancelot was abducted, and the name of the person who abducted her is similar to the name of the abductor in the romance. But yeah, so only Lancelot's not mentioned in that one. But so
apparently later it's expanded with the story of Merlin. So when Lancelot came, then afterwards the French were like, you know what, we're gonna add also Mr. Merlin into the mix as well.
yeah, Merlin comes from the name Myrddin, Myrdin, who is supposedly a poet from the early period, like the 6th century maybe or something. He went mad and hung about in a tree for a while after his lord died. Then the name Merlin was taken by Geoffrey of Monmouth. He changed it to Merlinus because if he kept the D in there, it comes off as a cuss word. So he wanted something more dignified. So he called him Merlinus instead of Merdinus because that people would just have laughed and laughed at it. Either they would have laughed or they would have been horrified and shocked and revolted if he'd been named Merdinus. So no comment because that involves a cuss word. But so he got, for example, he's the one in Geoffrey of Monmouth. He's the one, if I remember correctly, he's the one who found the red and the white dragon fighting under the foundations of the tower. And that was some
Vortigern and Merlin's story.
Yes, and that was originally Ambrosius who found the dragons and said. But then,
wait, there is a... Yeah, go ahead. I just saw that there is also a German version of Otter.
They're a German. Yeah, there's German. The Germans
There's a
have their own version.
there's a medieval version of the German story about Otter, translated from the French.
Yeah, there's a bunch. There's a Tristan.
Is a number of episodes in Heinrich from den Türling Dio Krone, this the crown. So it's about Heinrich instead of Otter.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. He offers a
Nice
more
choice.
original portrayal of Otter, so it's more original apparently. Otter is mere child where his father. Oh, that story. Yeah. I get it. Where his father the Uter Paradragon dies. So the Uter Paradragon, I believe that's a pseudo dragon, dies, but he regrets and acquires his kingdom to be inherent throughout his own endeavors. Later, when he is an adult, Otter listens to Lady of Fortune advice, which always turns him into the advantage in this work. So he has this lady who always talks about his future, and he follows up those advices and becomes a king thanks to that. Like what they did with the Disney movie, where Merlin is just merely to guide Otter to get the sword. Well, that's how it also went with the German story.
Yep, Uther is also mentioned in some of the Welsh triads. Pendragon means chief dragon, either main foremost leader or chief of warriors. It says here, and he had a reputation as a magician and like to transform into things, like to transform stuff. Apparently,
That's actually quite funny. Even the Scots have a version of Otter, but then he is more portrayed as a tyrant. He has both claims on Scotland and England.
Yeah, some of the Saints' lives also call him a tyrant.
Well, he is a warrior king, so he could be a tyrant.
I mean, in those days, kings weren't light years from being gang lords, if we're honest. Not to mention
that's not incorrect.
Carry on.
I'll go for it. Oh, I was just going to say that's not incorrect.
No, sadly not.
I think there was actually a documentary I was watching that remarked that knights during the days of like this period are have more in common with Tony Soprano than they do with Lancelot.
Yeah, probably. I mean, that's not hard.
Well, looks like this book already says like Britain has kings, but they are tyrants. She has judged. Holy shit! All right.
Oh, stop! That's Gildas.
Yeah,
that's
from
Gildas.
Gildas.
That's 6th century AD. So he's one of our earliest sources for this period. Annoyingly, he doesn't actually mention Arthur.
But he explains who the kings of Britain are.
Yep,
they were not so different when the Romans meet them.
Yeah, so
raging alcoholics.
They were kind of
there because the water was about as safe to drink as poison.
Yep. Throughout the Welshman of Nuris wrote in Latin, his history of the Bretons contains one of the first references to Otter, not as one of the various kings discussed by Nennius, but merely as a war leader against the invading Saxons. Nennius briefly relates the location of the 12 battles fought by Arthur against the invading Saxons. The last battle, which takes place at Mount Baldon, is also mentioned by Gildas, Bede, and the Annals of Wales.
Nennius is that chap was mentioning from the 9th century. The history of the Britons, although his name might be a pseudonym or something. What was I going to say? Arthur is not actually called king in a lot of the early traditions. He's called emperor.
God Emperor, kid. God Emperor. Yes, let's go for that.
He's called
God Emperor Chad Arthur.
Well, he was kind of
Emperor
a Chad.
Chad Arthur. He has like multiple wives and all that stuff. Yeah, he's a true Chad.
What
I do have to say that it's kind of like King Arthur is kind of a side character in most of his own stories. Like, I can't think of any like big specific myths other than Sword in the Stone, the Dame Ragnell, the Lady in the Lake story and the story where I think it's Alcalon, either witting or unwittingly, is pitted against him with a fake Excalibur in Arthur's hand, while Alcalon has the real sword because of Morgan Le Fay's chicaneries, and of course Lamore to Arthur at the ending. Those are the major myths I can think of, whereas most of the other knights of the Round Table have like much more interesting adventures.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean, in Geoffrey of Monmouth, he does things, but he's mostly a warrior kind of thing. So he's not very interesting. Here's a little bit about Kay and Bedivere in the Welsh tradition. I'm quoting again from How Cilhwch One Olwen. So Kay had this talent. 9 days and 9 nights his breath would last underwater, and 9 days and 9 nights he could go without sleep. No doctor could cure the wound from Kay's sword. He could be as tall as the tallest tree in the forest when he pleased, while when the rain was heaviest, a hand's span about what was in his hand would be dry by reason of the heat he generated. And when his companions were coldest, that would be the kindling for the lighting of a fire. And Bedwyr, you know that Sir Bedivere is the chap who later on would toss the sword back into the lake. But that doesn't come up here. That's a later tradition, I think. He never avoided any errand on which Kay went. No one in the island was as handsome as Bedwyr, save only Arthur and Drich, son of Kibgar. And Drich means appearance. And though he was one-handed, no 3 warriors on the same field could draw blood faster than he. Moreover, he would make 1 thrust with his spear and 9 counter thrusts. So there's a bunch of other people. Gwalchmai later became Sir Gawain. And then there's people who didn't, like Glurhir, interpreter of languages, who don't turn up in the later traditions at all. There's a whole globe of people who just don't turn up in the later traditions at all. So in this version, what happens is that in this story, what happens is they go to get the girl, but her father will die if the father is a giant, and he will die if as soon as his daughter marries, he will die. So he sends him on a ridiculous errand to get about 1 million different things. He's got a whole long list of things. Actually, first he tries to kill them a number of different times. And he keeps throwing things at them. They rose to go, but Ysbyddaden seized one of 3 poisoned stone spears that were near at hand and threw it at them. Bedwyr caught it and threw it back and struck Ysbyddaden right in the kneecap. You curse the barbarian of a son-in-law. That will be harder to walk uphill, etc. Then he lists his whole long list of things that he wants. I want you to, okay. When I get what I ask for, then you shall have my daughter. Then he goes a whole long list of things.
Which is kind of an interesting through line through a lot of mythologies. There's always the asshole dad-in-law.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, to be fair, he's going to die as soon as his wife marries.
Oh yeah, there's definitely a better reason for it than most other douchey father-in-laws, but it's still like there's a douchey father-in-law, perspective father-in-law in every single story across mythology.
Yeah, though you get that, there are things you will not get.
Or you just have Kronos who eats his own children.
That's true. And this chap was a charmer compared to that guy.
Well, in that case, Zeus had to rescue his future sister wife from the evil dad-in-law, who is also his dad.
Yes, I know, right?
Yeah, it
And then lock up all the Titans. I always love that.
And then whenever the chap names something he wants, Kilhuch says, it will be easy for me to get that, though you think otherwise. And this goes on for several pages. This is not the most literary. From a literary point of view, this is not necessarily of the highest. Story is not necessarily of the highest quality, but it's still interesting. There's a whole bit where they're trying to catch a boar because he's got a razor or something between his tusks. He's wandering around the place carrying a razor between his tusks for some reason. At one point, he was a king, but he got turned into a boar for his sins. And he just wanders around carrying this razor and shears and stuff like that between his tusks and destroying stuff. And they spend probably half the story trying to kill him. And I think this is actually mentioned in one of the Welsh, not Welsh, French romances, but I don't remember which one. So,
What? Oh, cool! This is actually the bloody damn. This is actually the whole damn talk with the giant chieftain. Nice.
what you've got that on your screen there too?
Yes, I do.
Ah, cool. Cool. So I already read a bit of it, but if you want to read more of it, you can.
There you go. Yeah, by the gods, for thou art chief. There is no affection to do me harm, save my wife. Whose are the sheep thou tendest, or who is thou the ford? Fools of man that you are. Throughout the world, it's known that this is a fort of Jabba.
Let me help you with that. Ysbyddaden.
Ysbyddaden, chief giant, and thou who art thou? Custrin, son of Mayen Gwending I am, because of my wife Jabbadan's chief giant, who brought my ruin. You two, who are you? Messenger of Arthur here to seek Aulen. So yeah, we man, we man, God protect you. For all the world, do not that. Never, one who never one has come to make that request that went away with his life. The shepherd arose. All right, cool.
Yeah.
This is great. This is literally a conversation of a shepherd with his dog and his sheep, who tried to rescue the daughter of the giant to get him to Otter, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, Kilhuch wants to marry her, even though he's never met her.
Oh, see, there you go.
So what was like the were new knights slowly introduced as more people started putting their spin on it, or did the numbers remain relatively consistent?
I think, yeah, I think some of them were added on. I think a lot of them were added on. Some of them were there from the beginning. Mordred was there from the beginning. Sir Gawain was there from the beginning, but his brothers came in later. Lancelot came in with
French.
with good old Chrétien de Troyes.
Mm-hmm.
And
the Lady of the Lake came with that, and the Round Table came with that, and Merlin came with that. So,
well, Merlin came with Geoffrey of Monmouth. The Round Table with Voss, you were mentioning him earlier.
mm-hmm.
There were knights that were still important in the French tradition that later disappeared or became obscure. Like, for example, there's that chap who in the Welsh tradition is called Owain, like modern Owen. The French called him Yvain, Yvain, and he eventually, I believe, turns into Sir Uwain in Mallory, but I don't think he does very much. Whereas he's important in the earlier Welsh and even the earlier French traditions.
There's also, oh, go for it. Sorry.
No, carry on.
He's like pointless side lord number 25 in A Song of Ice and Fire, pretty much.
Yeah, by the time Mallory comes along, that's basically.
We kind of forgot about the elephants.
Yeah, sorry about that. And there's also Erec and Aenid was important in the early French romances, and those names are probably of Breton origin. And in the Welsh versions, you've got Geraint, which is actually from Gerontius, and so those were important in the earlier tradition. And then they kind of
they were yeeted out of the story.
Yeah, they were like, yeah, we don't like that anymore. We're more interested in let's talk about Lancelot, Sir Balin. Let's talk about anyone else.
Sir Bors.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sir
Percival goes back. Percival goes back in Welsh. He's called Peredur. So he was the Peredur, son of Evrauk, and Evrauk means York. Half a second.
Yeah, he's an interesting one because he basically lives as a hobo for a really long time because his mom didn't want him to become a knight because his dad died in a battle. And so she didn't want that for him.
Yeah, and so Percival, he's still kind of important, and I guess he's still kind of important in Mallory and all that, but he's been sidelined a bit by Galahad, who was invented, I guess, in the 12th or 13th centuries. Let me see. It says here.
I think one like, what is it? I think Crimson Rogue once remarked that Galahad is basically God's favorite Gary Stew.
Pretty much. Pretty much. Pretty much. I don't think I've
God's
said
favorite
this before.
Gary stew. Yes, baby. It's God's favorite Gary stew. What are you making? I'm making stew today.
They just-
God's favorite stew.
But he's
Oh,
so
yeah.
pure that he never touches a lady.
Yeah, he's kind of boring.
Well, speaking
Yeah.
of non-boring, apparently in the chapter 18 of Liverick's Life of Sint Cowdock, it portrays Arthur as a selfish warlord who wastes his time gambling with his followers. Seeing a beautiful girl approaching, Arthur decides to rape her rather than offering her protection. The concept of knight possessing the rights of conquest over a damsel who escorts whose escort he has to defeat in Primitive Theme in the later Prose Tristan. So that sounds like a very hateful book.
Yeah, he for
It's
some
from
reason the Saints for some reason the hagiographers don't seem to have liked him much.
but the good news is it does portray the first signs of chivalry later on. So first in 1000 BC, so after Christ, 1075 it is, that book. So it's actually a pretty old book.
Yeah, let's see. Can I find this bit where there's a bit where I wish I could find it. There's a bit where Arthur has a mistress and he's fighting some other chap with her. Where is that?
Which one is it?
Let me see. 402. It should be at this page.
Oh, this is
Okay.
actually with the dragon? Oh, damn. Nice. This is with the dragon.
Let's see. Here we are, I think. Let's see. Let's see. Sorry, I'm still trying to find the bit where. Oh, here we are. There's a chap named Huael. And he's the son of Cow again, of CAW again. And he obtains possession of one of Arthur's mistresses, plural.
Oh, boy.
So,
Well, Arthur is a Chad.
Yep. He is a
So
total
He gets
Chad.
all the ladies.
And
So
if he
that-
doesn't get... It's not like you can refuse a tyrant king.
so he's a far cry from the nice guy, kind of cuckold, but still a nice guy. So there's all sorts of different stories going around of King Arthur, and those ones seem to have faded into obscurity. But because sorry, I'm still eating. He basically became a kind of an ineffectual nice guy. So there being like about 1 million different Arthurs. There's only like they said, there's only very few traditions where he actually does much on his own account. Even in Culhwch, in this one, Culhwch 1 Olwen, he doesn't actually. Most of the time, what he does is he says, "Which wonder should we get next?" Yep, here we go. Arthur said, "Which wonder should we seek now? We should seek Drudwyn, the pup of Grade, son of Eri," says someone. It doesn't actually say who. Maybe all his knights said it in unison. Maybe all his warriors said it in unison. There's also an odd incident because Arthur sometimes wrote poetry, sometimes apparently recited poetry, according to the traditions. So he's got one where he says something rude about Kay. He says,
This thing has fucking 534 pages of just historical text and all the stuff. Oh my god. Okay.
well, yeah, there's a lots and lots and lots and lots of stuff.
Yep.
So Arthur sang this song. Kay made a leash from the beard of Dulus, son of Elre. If Dulus were alive, he would kill you. Kay became angry, so the warriors of the island could barely make peace between him and Arthur. Nonetheless, Kay would have nothing to do with Arthur from then on. Not when the latter was wanting in strength and when his men were being killed. So how should we sum? Well, there's one other thing I could mention from the Welsh tradition. That's the dream of Rhonabwy, where basically what happens is this chap goes. He sleeps in this dingy place where the hospitality is rubbish. Then he has a dream where he goes to Arthur's court and sees all sorts of fantastic, splendidly well-dressed people there. Arthur is playing a board game with Owain, and Arthur's men keep attacking Owain's ravens, or else Owain's ravens keep attacking Arthur's men. And this goes on for a while, and then what happens at the end? Oh, where is this thing? Sorry.
This is so brutal. I love it.
177.
This is a nice story. I like it. It's all about, just beating up the Romans.
Yeah.
With wizards and Excalibur.
Oh, you must be reading Geoffrey of Monmouth.
Yep. I'm reading the Geoffrey of Monmouth. Yeah, indeed. That's some fine pages.
Yep. So anyway, they make peace between someone or other, and Arthur's bards began to chant a song which nobody there, except one chap, understood, except that it was in praise of Arthur. So, I should mention something about Mordred, though, because Mordred may not have been a bad guy at one point originally. He's viewed as kind of noble and heroic in the Welsh tradition. So maybe he turned evil later by being confused with somebody else.
Well, Mordred is just a guy with a big giant sword and black armor. I think they made him evil in the books. You had to represent something of evil, Otherwise, it would not be a god thing.
Yeah, let's see.
Oh, the book is off limits afterwards.
Oh, kill it.
Oh.
Mid-drought. Someone asserts
I
Mid-drought was a
cannot read French. Fuck that.
Medred was traditionally regarded as a paragon of virtue and courtesy, it says here. So what happened? Why did he become? How did he become evil later?
Probably it has to do something with how if you read texts of the Bible or something like that, it always have to represent something of good and evil. So therefore, because it is written by probably clerics, most likely in the early centuries, they added some evil and some good aspects into the story. And then once the French came with their bloody damn romance plots, you get even more good and evil, or more, the story of good and bad, the bad guys and the good guys, which is nice.
Yeah.
And of
So
course, it spiced up the story a bit.
yeah, introduce some conflict into it. The earlier traditions just say that there was an early record that says that Arthur and Medraut, which is Mordred, fell at Comlan, and Comlan was a famous battle, the last battle that Arthur fought, at which he died. But it doesn't say that they actually killed each other. So
I don't think they did. I don't think they killed each other. I think they just died on the battlefield, fighting
At least
cool and stuff.
on their last fight, at least in that version. And I think a little more to Arthur, that they're like, nah, Mordred dies via a spear that Arthur shoves through his chest, and Arthur gets hit in the head so hard in his helmet that he develops a brain hemorrhage.
yeah, I'm guessing that detail is probably taken from one of the French romances, but I can't say for certain because I haven't researched the later material yet. Okay.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting how many of these ancient bits of medieval literature don't really enter into pop culture very often. Pretty much the main focuses are like the Grail Quest, the death of King Arthur, a few other things. But
why did the Grail Quest not come to pop culture? Because it sounds like a real... Well, Indiana Jones did it, but...
Well, the main thing that utilizes the Grail Quest is the movie Excalibur, which is basically basically like Game of Thrones if it was directed by the guy who did 300.
Nice.
So
it's really really badly acted. There's a lot of Merlin's the only person who's gives a good performance in that movie.
But at least it has some decent... We didn't forget about everything.
Well, they have to forget about a lot. They have to cram a lot, and the character decisions are not very well built up too.
Kind of forgot. The Grail main...
Also, there's a... Oh, go for it.
No, finish your sentence, and then I'll say some things about Grail.
I was just about to say, in Excalibur, there's a moment where there's a sex scene where the dude is in full plate armor for some reason.
Oh, that must be highly pleasurable. No comment.
Yeah, if you're a sadomasochist and want to be a eunuch.
Someone might find out a turn on. No comment. But
no, not this scene. It's actually pretty bad.
The Grail may derive from a cauldron of plenty that Arthur and his men go to retrieve from the other world, and early poem called simply "Which Man." I think that's the first word of it, or something. The first words of it. There was a disgusting theory back in the 20s about what the Grail and the spear represented, but I don't want to get into that because it would be gross.
Phallic and non-phallic. Phallic and vulvic, I mean.
Something along those lines, yeah. So I was like, oh, this is subtle.
Like a brick.
This was it was kind of. I don't know if that's true. If the shop was just being weird.
Let's just go with yes, because everybody in medieval times is kind of weird.
Yeah, and this is like pre-medieval, so it might even go. This might even go back to pagan traditions. So all sorts of bizarre things could have happened.
Pagan traditions. The fun
Not that
part.
this pagans or anything.
Dead religion, nobody cares.
Well, there are still some people who identify with paganism today. And I don't want to diss them. Basically, the thing is that
Most of this, well, I guess a lot of those people are fairly chill, I suppose, but a lot of them are friggin' weird.
yeah, I mean, the ones I know are chill.
Like the poser pagans.
Yeah, the ones I know are fine. The ones I know are okay.
Yeah.
The only thing being that
people who like
the only thing being that here's the thing: the supernatural is scary. The early he just died. The supernatural is scary. And the people in the pagan times knew it was scary. It's not always, people don't always know that, don't always remember that today. Whoops. He's dead. I was going to end shortly anyway, but wait and see if he comes back.
Wow. All right. Wow, it's already 1 hour. True. My head's just spinned around. Boy. That's not a good sound. And I need to put this there.
Let's see. So what else should I mention about?
Well, you could read the text in front of you.
Yeah, I mean, I could read from some of the non-Arthurian.
Just try it. I did it, so you probably can do better.
Let me see what other things let me do this. Let me read what this. Oh, here he's back.
yeah, sorry. I don't know why I died.
Welcome back. I was just saying that the only thing with paganism is that the supernatural is scary, and the pagans back in the day knew it was scary. It's easy to forget that now because the sheer terror of the supernatural has been attenuated.
Have you never heard about the bloody damn lovely stories about the German
I think like
little
science
story
is kind of
tells?
the death of the supernatural in a lot of ways.
It's great.
Yeah. Yeah, so people aren't scared of it anymore.
But it looks like
They
science
should.
is basically the death of the supernatural in a lot of ways.
Yeah, in a lot of ways.
You can still be scared of the guy who just stalks your window every night, and if you don't go to sleep, then he will come in.
Yeah, there's still plenty of things to be scared of, but they're usually boring things.
That black shadow over there in the corner of my eye. Yeah.
Yeah. So, um, so what does before we'll probably close shortly, but before we do, let's see what Rachel Bromwith says about Arthur. Blah, 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 blah. As the great hero of the Britons, it is surprising to find that Arthur was given no patronymic in the Triads of the island of Britain, nor in Culhwch and Olwen, that is the one we were reading from before with the giant, nor in any source before Geoffrey of Monmouth, where Arthur is presented as the son of Uther Pendragon, the supreme ruler of Britain, and is the latter's wife, Igraine.
He's an illegitimate son who got put into power by the local wizard.
Well, pretty much. I mean, I guess, yeah. I mean, they weren't married yet. She was married to someone else, or had had Uther killed Gorlois by then? I'm not sure.
I think when she was conceived, definitely was not. They were not married. No.
Oh, but he's a bastard.
Yeah. Yeah, he's like good old Jon Snow. I imagine that's where a lot of the inspiration came from along with the sort of Aragorn type.
Arthur Snow.
Yeah. Or wouldn't it be Arthur Water? Well, Arthur Blackfire. Arthur Blackfire sounds much cooler.
Yes, it does sound cooler. Arthur Blackfire. Arthur's name has some scholars derived Arthur's name from a chap named Lucius Artorius Costus, a 2nd century Roman prefect stationed at York, who led the legion on an expedition to Brittany, who might have had descendants behind. But the problem being that Arthur is nowhere actually Latinized to Artorius. So that's kind of weird. So there's a list of 11 victorious battles against the English, and mentioned in the 9th century, and those ones get expanded upon in Geoffrey of Monmouth, possibly including some popular traditions. Also, there's Arthur's grave is one of the wonders of the island of Britain. There are also bear associations of his name, like bear as in the bear and the lady fair. Associations of his name. That might account for some of his more savage characteristics, pardon me. Pardon me. Let's see. Blah, blah, blah. The strongest evidence for Arthur's historical existence is to be derived from the fact that 4 Irish, Welsh, and Scots, pardon me, men are recorded as having the name Arthur during the 7th century. They were all born in the 7th century. Blah, blah, blah. And it's been suggested that a probable source for the battle list may have been an early bardic praise poem. Blah, 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 but it remains. And there is one reference to it in the Gododin, pardon me, where it says, where it mentions a warrior who performed great deeds, although he was not Arthur. Canny Bay of Arthur. Unfortunately, this allusion remains highly ambiguous. It's hard to tell when the poem was actually composed, committed to writing, and whether there were any additions to it. So, but it's still important in the argument about Arthur's historicity. And there have been all sorts of tradition of theories. Was he a North British hero? Was he a Romano-British opponent of the English in northern Britain? Which would make sort of sense. Was he a national hero of the entire island of Britain? You've probably heard of Cadbury Castle, which some people thought might have been the original Camelot.
Yeah, I think I have a long time ago. It's, during my King Arthur class.
Yeah. And I think I may have seen that back in the day, but I don't remember it very well. And there's an increase of interest later on, like the 12th century, for whatever reason. And that's when a lot of our stuff that people are familiar with gets written down. Geoffrey of Monmouth and the romances get written down. So, and I've mentioned before some of the theories that he might have been this chap, that chap, the other chap. So, and I've also mentioned that there are all sorts of people in the tradition in the Welsh tradition that do not appear later, that got sidelined. I mentioned a bunch. One of them, another one is Hrúvaun. It's like a whole globe of them. And the various sons of Caw, C-A-W. In fact, somewhere there's a list of Arthur's knights in the Welsh tradition, and not very many of them are people we'd be familiar with necessarily. Half a second, let me find this. Yes, I also have to I have to go away from the switch. Let's see. I'm going to have to go AFK for a couple of minutes. If I can just find this thing. Okay. Okay, and then I'll recite that. Then I can read that list, and then after that maybe we can close off. And
All right.
Gonna have to take my walk, but I'll be right back.
Now what can you do? I think I can hear the bathroom noises from here.
Bathroom noises?
It's either trickling or it is or he's washing yep, he had to go to the bathroom. It's okay.
Whoops. Maybe I'll find a way of editing that out later.
But you're live.
Yeah, that's the thing. I never know what's audible and what isn't. Next time I'll shut the door, or else I'll mute myself.
Maybe you should have recorded instead of live.
I don't think I can.
Smarter.
Yeah, that's fine.
Or else I shouldn't have flushed it that way. You wouldn't know. You wouldn't know what that was. And I could pretend it was something else.
Yeah. Well, the trickling water was very clear. It wasn't.
The three golden-tongued knights were Gwalchmai, son of blah blah blah, Judwas, son of blah blah blah, and Eulod, son of blah blah blah. And the only one that someone might have heard of, maybe, is Gwalchmai, because he's probably the antecedent of Sir Gawain. So that's the only one.
The guy who made it so that King Arthur actually had a fight on his hands because he had his beef. He wanted his salty rematch with Lancelot.
Yeah. Well, he had a point.
He had good reasons. Yeah, both of his brothers others died, including the one that Lancelot knighted, which is a really, really, really sad bit of tragedy right there.
Carry on.
Oh, I was just saying, and the guy who, since
You just got muted.
Oh, weird.
It was just because I was
Somehow.
slightly far away.
I
was
didn't
just
mute
saying,
you. Let me see. Are you muted? No, you're not muted, but you're not audible either.
oh dear. Oh dear, seems to be a repeat of the last time we did this.
Well, that's kind of weird. Why don't you go in chat and why don't you maybe you could post it in private chat and then I can read what you're saying. Only I don't see
I
private
hear him
chat. That's
clearly.
kind of weird. Why don't I not see private chat in the first place?
I do hear him clearly. It's probably on your end and that he's a little bit muted. Thanks, StreamYard, for
Okay.
that.
Anyway, whatever you were saying, if you remember, you can put it in comments later. I'll just read off this list and then we'll call it a night. The three virgin knights were Blurt, son of Blurt, Peredur, son of Evrog, and Galat, son of Lancelot Locke. And those are all from the French tradition, although Peredur is in the Welsh tradition as well. Peredur becomes Percival in the French tradition. Three knights of battle were Cadur, Lancelot Locke, and Iwain. So by now we've got Lancelot is in the Welsh tradition by now. This is in the later period. There were three enchanter knights, Menu, Tristan, and Eivillig the dwarf.
Tyrion Lannister, anyone?
Three royal whites. Nastians, the son of the king of Denmark. Medrod, son of Flo. And Hoel, son of Emir Thedau. Medrod is actually Mordred. Three just knights. Bleis, Cardog, and Pedrog. I don't know if any of those were pardon me, in the French novels or not. Three irresistible knights. Morvron, Sanvev Angel Face, and Glelweed Mighty Grasp. And lastly, three counselor knights. Cunon, son of Pludno, Arlen, son of Cunvarch, whatever, and Llywelyn the Old. And Llywelyn the Old is actually a poet from the Welsh tradition. So, okay. And we're going to call it good because I can't hear anybody apart from myself anyway. So, and I think we've said plenty about Arthur. Hopefully some of this was interesting and informative.
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
So we're going to, like I say, we're going to call it good. Have a riot.
Bye.
And